The portal is open, and Georgia Tech's looking at a quarterback.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into a bonus episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. Wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. Of course, as you can see, we're kind of giving you a bit of as soon as the information comes out, we want to be able to bring it to you guys. And so that's why we're going live with this bonus episode, because there are some very important things coming as the transfer portal is officially open. And so that means a lot of movement is starting to take place. And we want to get into one specific name that's been brought up amongst the world of those who are locked in, pun intended, I guess I should say, in the world of college football and know the movement that's happening in college football right now. And so let's get into this episode of looking at, is Bo Pribula a good fit? But first, Jarvis, what would it take to get Bo Pribula to the Flats? A name that a lot of Georgia Tech fans and college football fans should recognize, because he's already moved programs more than once.
Right. Yeah, and when you think he came from Penn State initially, didn't really play that much there, and then he moved on to Mizzou. And I was talking to one of our Locked On hosts of the Locked On Mizzou, and he was saying how essentially Bo wanted a little bit of bread. You know, he said he wanted the 1.5 million specifically, and Eli Drinkowitz wasn't having it. So when you think about it from that standpoint, you think about intentions. I believe he only has like 1 year of eligibility left. So those are the type of guy. Do you want to get into that type of? I know we're going to get into whether or not he'll be a good fit a little bit later on in the episode, but I think that when you think about what he brings to the Flats, he brings experience. And I said that, Graham Knowles and Cole Bergeron, those guys aren't enough going into the season. You need someone that has starting experience, and then being in the SEC, hey, that's some good experience to have, right? When you coming into a program. So this is a guy that, like I said, he was at Penn State and he was at Mizzou, and then I'm always want to figure out, like, why did a guy jump in the portal? And I got John Miller, host of Locked On Mizzou, said that, hey, he wanted a little bit more money, and Mizzou wasn't willing to come up with it.
Yeah, his valuation, according to On3, is close to $2 million, Jarvis. Yep. That is reportedly, what Bo Pribula is looking to get in the transfer portal, which means, that's a steep price to ask. I never want to, like, in this world of college football, when guys are just looking for the best opportunity for them, I never truly want to think badly of anyone who is just looking for a better opportunity. However, like, the storyline that carries with Bo Pribula is a guy who was on a team on Penn State that was trying to compete for a national championship, and he said, hey, you know what? I've got to go look at my next opportunity and make the move to Mizzou. And so he left during the middle of that. Kind of gives you those Lane Kiffin vibes, even though he's a player and Lane Kiffin's a coach. It's different circumstances, but it feels a little icky, a little, you're like, man, the circumstances built around him having to make that move are really tough. But you also understood, because this guy wanted to be a starting quarterback and was really only allowed to be kind of a gadget quarterback when he was at Penn State. And then he goes to Mizzou, plays out, the course of this season, ends up with that ankle injury. And, you kind of wonder about what you're getting at this stage of his career. A guy who is asking for a lot of money, but comes like you're not paying close to $2 million and getting a perfectly molded quarterback. And I think that is part of the concern that I have of what's it going to take. Like, it's going to take Chris Weinke convincing Bo that this is the best opportunity for him. And it's also going to take close to $2 million. With all of that going around, I'm like, not to say that Georgia Tech is too good to say, thanks, but no thanks. I just wonder with this particular option, if maybe, there aren't some deterrents based on what he's had in the past that make you go, I'm not entirely sure. And then I think the other part of this, Jarvis, is when I see that Virginia Tech is also in the mix,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I know James Franklin's going to pony up the money and he has a relationship there. So would it take more money to pull him away from Virginia Tech? And then is that the best use of the money that you have to spend to get guys out of the transfer portal? I guess for me, my gut feeling says I don't think so.
And you know what? I'm kind of with you on that one, because we talked about, or we had some offline conversations about what James Franklin is going to bring to this conference. The first thing is, the name value, right? Obviously, he's a name. He's a guy that obviously has coach Pribula, and when you look at that, right, you think about that. We always talk about relationships, and a lot of guys say that, hey, today's college football world, their relationships don't matter. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
It's just that money is involved now, right? So when you think about the relationship that he has with Pribula and what James Franklin is bringing to the table, before he even agreed to become the head coach of that team, they had to have some financial backing. He had to know that some financial backing was going to come along with taking the job. So I think that when you look at what Pribula brings to the table, like I said, he has experience. He has some good experience in the SEC, which is looked at as the best conference in the land, right? I don't know if the college football playoff is saying that.
I was just about to say,
we might be a changing of the guard, so to speak, and I think that it can, because I've said this from the beginning, Caleb. I've always been one to say, once the money got involved, I don't think that the powers that be were going to get extremely better or widen the gap between guys who compete for national championship and guys who are going to be looking to win 9 or 10 games a year and be totally satisfied with that. I thought that it was going to spread the wealth a little bit, because from a talent standpoint, because guys don't have to wait in line anymore. And I think Pribula is a prime example of that. So when you think about his situation at Mizzou and wanting some more money, it makes sense, right? Because if he's valued at $2 million and Mizzou wasn't willing to give him that 1.5, that makes all the sense in the world. And I think that when you add James Franklin into the fold and coaching him before, knowing what his capabilities are, and looking at it from that standpoint, I think that this may be I'll be willing to take X amount of dollars because I know who you are, and I probably get a wink, wink, hey, I'm gonna be the starter type situation at Virginia Tech, versus saying not really knowing, unless Key is gonna let Bo know, hey man, here's who our OC is. We haven't announced it just yet. So I think right now this is a situation where I feel like Virginia Tech might have the advantage.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. But you look at all of the outside things of the money aspect, the relationship aspect. Let's now take a look, Jarvis, to just the football aspect of this. Does Bo Pribula fit Georgia Tech's program?
This episode of the Locked On Georgia Tech is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. The Hawks are getting ready to do whatever they're doing, be mid, which I just be honest. So hey, man, how about this? NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app right before those Hawks tip off. So what I want you to do is open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. Always bring something new. They get boosts, bonuses, and surprises. The timing is perfect. Right before the games, right before the weekend starts. So before tip off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during the NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part is used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and price is jumping all over the doggone place. That's why Game Time gives you the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I remember using Game Time right before kickoff. I was right there at the stadium. I was just like, man, just be patient with me because I'm going to wait till this ticket gets down to the right price, and then I'm going to go ahead and purchase it. You can do it right up to the kickoff. It is amazing. I'm telling you, you need to do it right now. Not right now. When the games get ready to get started. Because, hey, man, the Peach Bowl, college football playoff, you might want to get some tickets and check your team out. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege. Download the app today.
We appreciate you guys locking in with us on Locked On Georgia Tech. Of course, bit of a different setup. When the news drops, you want to get to it as soon as possible, and sometimes you're doing other things. And so we really appreciate you guys tuning in for this episode and sticking around as we get into this conversation of Bo Pribula and what he is as a prospect joining the Yellow Jackets if Georgia Tech is able to entice him enough and, let's be honest, pay him enough to get him to the flats. So I think part of this, Jarvis, this conversation is looking at the fit itself of, does the football aspect of this, most important part, does it all truly make sense? And I think when you look at Bo Pribula, the athlete, you think about he is that dual threat. He is the guy that has the legs. What I think he had, through his limited time playing, because I think he only played 8 games this past season when he had that dislocated ankle. Through that time, had 6 rushing touchdowns and 11 passing touchdowns through the air. So a guy who is clearly a dual threat. Looked good to start off the season when he beat out Sam Horn in order to get that job at Mizzou. And then once he came back from the dislocated ankle, kind of didn't look like the same quarterback completely. But Georgia Tech is not afraid of a bit of a project and getting someone who isn't perfect, but they can kind of mold, and Chris Weinke could be a part of that process, molding them into an even better quarterback. I think just talent-wise, Bo Pribula, home run when it comes to adding him to the program. It's just the other stuff that makes you kind of wonder.
You know what? And that's my biggest concern, right? Because I think that when you look at on the surface, the mobility, is there, check the box there. As far as throwing the football, it can be better, right? Because when you look at his non-con numbers versus his in-conference numbers, it's vastly different. Let me tell you, I talk about the SEC experience. He didn't fare well in the SEC as far as throwing the football. And I think that in today's game, You have to be able to do that. We had a whole full-on conversation about Haynes King being put into throwing situations where you have to throw the football when you were down because your defense couldn't stop a nosebleed in the month of November. And he didn't fare well in those particular situations. Now, he did have some success, as far as with Boston College, sure. But that Pitt game, it was just too much for him. And I think that once you take away your best asset, which was him running the football, and you force him to throw, I don't want to see that anymore, to be honest with you. So that's my biggest question mark when it comes to Bo Pribula. When, okay, you are mobile and you're decent, you have a decent arm strength, but can you win a football game when you can't run the football or when they know you're throwing the football? And I don't know if that would necessarily be a good fit for Georgia Tech going forward, because here's the thing, man. I will continue to go back to this. When Brent Key talks about making that jump, I feel like from a talent perspective and having different things to tap into from individual players on your team, I feel like if you want to make a jump, the best position to do that is quarterback, especially in today's game. And, with Chris Weinke being the assistant, whatever, and, the mythical offensive coordinator that we don't know, what he wants to bring to, as far as what he wants to bring to the table. I'm sure that part of it is a guy who can sling it, man, because you want to be able to put up points in today's college world and be able to just hold it down on the defensive side of football. And the way you do that is by getting a guy that has that asset, that arm strength to be able to make every throw that you want to make. And he has the ability or capability to be able to bring you back when when teams know you have to throw the football. And I don't know if Pribula would be a fit for that, because like when you look at that in-conference numbers, just looking at the hardcore numbers, they don't look good. And I don't know if I'll be willing to come out of pocket $2 million or $2.5 million to bring a guy like that in.
Yeah, I think the short game, that accuracy is kind of on a different level. The throws, I think I looked and he was graded at like an 81 for throws under 10 yards. And so it's like the accuracy is there. It's just as he continues to push the ball down the field that it gets called into question. And so that's why I wonder if that's something that Brent Key feels like Chris Weinke could help Bo potentially work on, or if it's just too much of a problem, because I see some Haynes King aspects in Bo Pribula, which is why I assume this coaching staff is like, hey, we could just slide this guy in over here and keep it rolling, because we know that Brent wants to keep the offensive identity very similar to what they've done in the past with Buster Faulkner. And so that's what I get the thought process. I think for me, it's the eyes out interest that I've seen from Bo that maybe makes me wonder if this is the best option to go with. And then obviously, it kind of seems like for you, Jarvis, like the specific skill set, a little bit of a question mark. And so it's one of those, this is not going to be the only quarterback that Georgia Tech's going to take a look at. He's just the first, and he's a big name. And so I think that gets a lot of people's attention. And so it's it's worth talking about for sure.
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, man, Haynes King was an excellent player. And I think that it's a little bit unfair to compare Pribula to Haynes King when he doesn't have anywhere close to the numbers that Haynes King put up in his career here at Georgia Tech. So I think that, it makes sense that Key is bringing him in for a visit because of his skill set. And I think that, you kind of have to take the whole Haynes King comparison out of it and just look at him for what he is and what he's been able to do, because you have to judge hard, like especially guys who have starting experience. Because if you're not going to go with Graham Knowles or Cole Bergeron, those guys have to see, hey, this guy is really good. He has a lot of experience, and I would totally understand or be okay with sitting out another year and learning or whatever and compete for the position the following year. So, yeah, you can't just bring guys who are just, oh, yeah, he got some games played. And Pribula has, he got some games played, but you got to look at, like, really kind of comb through this bad boy and comb through the tape and look at it and say, okay, is this guy closer to Haynes King or is this guy closer to Graham Knowles and or Cole Bergeron? That's the question you're going to have to answer once they bring him in for a visit.
That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Make sure you join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.